Welcome to Behind the Investigation on Atlanta News First. I'm investigative reporter Andy Perotti. Joining me now is Chief Investigative Reporter Brendan Keefe. Brendan, how you doing?
Good to see you, Andy.
So this is a big update to a long series that you've been working on over the past year, In Plain Sight, where you uncovered federal agents essentially breaking the law?
Well, essentially operating within a very odd section of the law known as civil asset forfeiture. So these are deputized federal agents. They're really local police who are DEA task force officers operating at the airport, stopping people after they've already gone through TSA search, and they're stopping them at the boarding door and asking to see inside their bags. Now, when we did this investigation last year, we're now well into our second year of this investigation, but when we did this investigation last year, we discovered that, their argument was, hey, these are consensual searches. We're asking people if they'll give us consent. But then somebody saw our investigation, a passenger, and before he went on his next flight, and he saw it on YouTube, our Atlanta News First channel on YouTube, saw the whole 25 minutes. And part of that was legal advice saying, hey, you don't have to consent. In fact, you can say, am I free to go or am I being detained? And if you're not being detained, you can walk away with your bag. He did exactly that. And the agents followed him on the plane, grabbed the bag off the plane. And then the way they acted actually spurred a major investigation because when we did the story on what he recorded, the Department of Justice Inspector General reopened an investigation, and that led to the U.S. Justice Department ordering the DEA to shut down this cold consent encounter program nationwide. Take a look.
You're either going to sign a consent form saying that you're allowing us to search them,
Whatever you guys are doing in this airport
or I'm going to detain them,
is totally wrong.
run my dog on it, and get a search warrant.
I'm a random search, guys.
I didn't feel like I could have said no.
So those white folks, and I'm the random search.
No, there's no way this is random.
Innocent passengers searched at the gate by plainclothes drug agents looking to seize cash.
You're taking people's money based off an assumption.
I work hard for my money.
How many innocent people do you have to search before you find what you're looking for?
Sir, I've got nothing to say to you.
The DEA still hasn't answered our questions, but this 2-year Atlanta News First investigation
Why do people have to prove themselves innocent?
would lead to a single incident that would end the entire program nationwide.
Oh, that's my. Hey.
That's yours. Where's your bag at?
I don't consent to search, sir.
You don't have to consent. Where's your backpack at? Where is it? Under your seat?
It got put away, but I don't consent to being searched.
I don't care what your consent stuff.
Had you not seen our investigation, what would you have done?
I would have just assumed that it was part of a standard screening procedure and consented to the search.
David recorded the incident on the very same phone where he had watched our investigation in plain sight. He stopped recording only to double check the article so he could stand up for his rights.
I didn't consent to be searched. Like, I dragged off the plane here. Is that accurate?
So you walked off the plane. I didn't drag you off. I took your bag off the plane. So
You took the bag off my plane. Okay.
Tell your story.
Back detained, not you.
Yeah, you're trying this legal stuff. It's not going to work, dude.
This particular passenger said no, did not give consent,
Correct.
and the task force officer removed his bag from the plane anyway.
And to do that, the agent needed reasonable suspicion.
The Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Justice reopened his investigation of the DEA's airport cold consent encounters after seeing the video David recorded.
We wouldn't do this and be doing it across the country if it was illegal.
Without the subject thinking to immediately use their cell phone to record the event, we certainly wouldn't have known about it. In fact, we clearly wouldn't have known about it because absent that video, there was no record of the incident.
The DEA had no record because agents didn't find drugs or cash in David's bag.
The DEA wasn't keeping records of its encounters unless it found cash or drugs.
And they promised you they would.
And they promised us after our first report a decade ago they would.
Once they learned of your latest investigation, they were going back and filling out these reports from months earlier?
It turned out because they hadn't found any cash or drugs when they did the search of that individual, they hadn't prepared any paperwork at the time. When we began our investigation and asked for the paperwork, that's when, months later, they started creating paperwork trying to lay out why they did what they did.
David's name was put on a DEA list because he bought a last-minute ticket.
When you buy a last minute ticket, we get alerts.
In some cases, the only reason for the so-called cold consent encounter was a purchase of a last-minute ticket. I purchased a last-minute ticket to come interview you.
Approaching individuals based solely on that basis, without any lead, any other information to suggest they might be a drug courier or money launderer, was concerning.
The Inspector General discovered David's last-minute ticket was reported to the DEA by an airline employee who was a regular paid informant.
A single commercial airline employee received tens of thousands of dollars, effectively a cut of the money seized.
It turned out that the individual was getting a percentage of the amount seized on multiple occasions over a longer period of time.
Informants are being paid with confiscated property from searches that the informants triggered with no real evidence. It's obvious why that's a potential abuse and a potential violation of civil rights.
U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia launched his own inquiry with the Department of Justice, citing the findings of our investigation.
What was the most troubling thing you saw in our reporting?
There is an economic incentive to stop, search, and confiscate, even where there was little or no, in many cases, no evidence implicating the person searched, and where here in Georgia it appears that there may have been racial profiling involved.
Senator Ossoff's inquiry and the Inspector General's report landed on the Attorney General's desk within days of each other.
It is a scathing description of serious deficiencies in this program that impact the constitutional rights of my constituents in Georgia. And I don't know whether without reporting from Atlanta News First, that would have come to light.
We are recommending, which is what we did in the report, immediately suspending these activities, which the department did.
This is the directive from the Deputy Attorney General of the U.S. Department of Justice, ordering the DEA to stop searching innocent passengers at departure gates nationwide.
I'm not sure that this change, this investigation, and this halt to potentially very problematic DEA practices would have occurred without your reporting. You have been on this story helping to expose what appear to be potentially serious civil rights violations.
Now, at Hartsfield Jackson and airports across the nation, there's no sign of plainclothes drug agents searching passengers at the boarding door. The agents appear to have departed. It's unclear if they'll ever return.
Brendan, incredible. So is the DEA even responding?
Well, they haven't responded to us for over a year. We first asked for an interview. We even showed up in person at the DEA headquarters in Virginia, and the DEA was silent. They didn't even give us a statement for over a year. Every time we would do story after story on this, they finally have responded, only because they've been ordered to stop doing this because of our investigation. What the DEA says is they were already doing a review of their cold consent encounters, and while it's suspended, that review is ongoing. So if it does start up again, it may come back with changes.
And remind me, why was David that passenger who saw your story and then recorded the whole interaction on his cell phone? Why was he even stopped to begin with?
It turns out it's just because he booked a last-minute ticket. He works for a consulting firm. He's actually a fairly highly placed executive. But he's also a minority, and he believes that played a role in why he was stopped. But the official word from the Department of Justice Inspector General is he bought a last-minute ticket, and last minute is described as within 48 hours. As you saw in the story, I said to the Inspector General, we bought a last-minute ticket at Atlanta News First Investigates to go see him for the interview in Washington, D.C. This is a standard practice, certainly for journalists and other business people. This was a business flight, in fact, booked through the booking platform for David's corporation. So, I mean, this was not suspicious at all, and it was the only reason he was stopped.
In some of your prior reporting, you interviewed lawmakers on both sides of the aisle that wanted to stop this practice. Where does that basically stand at this point, now that the DEA is being forced to stop?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is it's probably moot only because it's not happening at all nationwide, unless, with the limited exception that it's a existing drug trafficking investigation with a major drug trafficker who's getting on a flight. It has to be predicated on an existing investigation, not sort of a fishing expedition for money or drugs at the gate. But in this case, what it comes down to is that David was recording because he saw our investigation. That led to the investigation we just discussed shutting this down. But where does the legislation stand? It's called the FAIR Act. There are 9 co-sponsors on the Republican side, 9 co-sponsors on the Democrat side in the House of Representatives, with the Senate waiting to take this up. It's made it to the House floor, but not to a vote. It's probably going to not be brought up before this session is over. So it will have to be refiled in January. And they've refiled it year after year, actually. So I suspect it will be refiled.
And Brendan, we got to talk about these kickbacks. There was someone getting kickbacks? Like, walk us through this.
Yeah, I mean, they're legal technically because it's a finder's fee or an informant fee that the DEA was paying to airline employees. We knew they were doing this with the TSA. It was documented. In fact, they even say so in their own filings with the federal court when they're trying to forfeit the money. In other words, they've seized the money and the government wants to keep it. Remember, the agency that seizes it gets to keep it if it's forfeited. They were saying, yeah, we gave the TSA kickbacks when they would let us know that there was cash in the, in a bag or something like that. In this case, we know from the Inspector General that a single airline employee was receiving tens of thousands of dollars there at the Cincinnati airport, and it's happened at other airports as well, where that employee was getting those kickbacks, if you will, as a cut of the money seized. So are these legal? It's a really questionable area because it's a percentage of the money seized. And the other thing is they're not alleging any criminal activity. They're just giving a list of last minute ticket purchases. And so imagine you or I, or anyone watching this books a last minute ticket, meaning within 48 hours, and they're suddenly put on a DEA list. And then they turn the screws to get you to give consent. Like David ultimately did. He gave consent and they searched his bag, but only after they had pressured him and pressured him and pressured him, only because an airline employee got paid to give them his name.
You know, we were just talking about how oftentimes we are reporting if a legislative body or an agency takes action. Sometimes we say following our investigation, but you seem to believe that this was because of your investigation. Break that down for us.
Yeah, I mean, we're always very careful to not sort of claim credit for something. We usually say after our investigation, they're shutting this down. We're not saying this is a cause and effect situation. Correlation is not causality. That's one of our sort of mantras as investigators. This case is different, and because David's case is what brought down this program, it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back with the the Inspector General, and then the Deputy Attorney General, who then ordered the DEA to stop. It was because of David's case, because of the video he recorded, sort of laid bare their methods that ran counter to what they claimed they were doing. The DEA was telling the federal courts and the Inspector General they were doing one thing when the video shows they were doing something else. And it really runs afoul or right up against the Fourth Amendment, which is your protection against search and seizure, warrantless search and seizure, because he said he didn't give consent and they didn't really have probable cause. They barely had reasonable suspicion, which is the lowest standard of proof. So that's why we can say but it's important to point out that there were a lot of other players in this, including the Institute for Justice. Mm-hmm. The Institute for Justice has been working with us from day one, and they alerted us to David's video because he was one of their clients, but he recorded that because he watched our story.
All
so the video would not have
existed.
existed. That's right. The video would not have existed had he not watched Atlanta News First Investigates.
Wow. Incredible reporting. More than a year. It seems like you've been working on this series for over a year. You can watch all of Brendan's stories in this investigation on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, and anywhere where you get your podcast. Thanks, Brendan. Welcome to Behind